Hey, what is up, guys? It's me, Anthony, here to give you guys another movie review. This time it is for the new MCU film, Black Widow. They took their damn time in giving us a Black Widow movie. I'm so happy for Scarlett Johansson, but at the same time, I feel like they kind of gave her the shaft. I mean, Scarlett Johansson was the first female Avenger, the only female Avenger for a long time, and she has been fighting for a long time, since the beginning of the MCU, trying to convince Marvel and Disney that she needs a solo film, and she needed a solo film a long time ago. And she finally did it. She finally got her film, but is it too little too late? Natasha Romanoff confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake, long before she became an Avenger. The biggest positive about this movie is Scarlett Johansson and the rest of the cast, and this shouldn't be really a surprise because this is the MCU. If you've been a fan of the MCU or you watch some Marvel movies, you know that the main cast is usually really good. Not so much their villains, but we'll get into that later. This is pretty much a really good send-off for Scarlett Johansson, though I still feel a little bit salty for her, which we will get into in the negatives. Other than Scarlett Johansson, I think that the standout performance in this film is played by Florence Pugh. She's kind of our comedic person in this film, but she also has some serious sides to her, and I just loved her back and forth with Scarlett Johansson. It was really well done. I really believed her as being Natasha's sister, and the rest of the cast is great too. You have like this family. This is all about family, right? I thought I was watching Fast and the Furious for a minute because they were talking about family so much. And Black Widow has to be one of the most action-packed Marvel movies I've seen in a while. I was watching this in the theater and I was like, dang, they're getting in fights a lot. It was like every 10 minutes there was a big fight scene, and they dragged out for a long time, and there's a lot of physical contact. And I was confused because I was thinking in my head, I was like, wait a minute, why am I so surprised by this? Do Marvel films don't have that much action? One thing that I really liked about this film is that it's probably one of the darkest MCU films to date. Some of the subject matter that is hinted at and explained in this movie is pretty damn dark. And I will say, though, the villains are kind of weak in this movie. The main villain, the head honcho guy, he's kind of a sick individual, and I felt like he was probably one of the most realistic Marvel villains. Like, you can see this guy on like Dateline News saying that they finally caught him or something. But let's get into the cons of this movie, and there's quite a few. There's some nitpicks that I have in here, and one of them being that this movie should have been made in 2016. It's really sad that we have to go through this, and Scarlett Johansson had to go through this. She should have been the first Marvel female superhero to go on to the big screen. No offense to Captain Marvel, but I mean, she's Black Widow. She's the first female Avenger. And this also ties into one of my other issues with the MCU in general, and that is that it's not that easy for casual fans to jump into the series anymore. And Black Widow really drives that theory home, with this being a prequel that should have came out, like I said before, in 2016, after Civil War and before Infinity War. And even someone like me who has seen every Marvel movie, every Marvel TV show, I even found it hard to remember certain characters' names and certain events that happened in past movies. It's not something that I think that makes the movie bad or anything. It's just something for me personally that I saw and I noticed that kind of just got on my nerves. And let's talk about the villain in this movie. The other villain, I guess the pseudo villain, if you will, and that is Taskmaster. I see a lot of people on Twitter crying that Taskmaster is not good. He's a horrible villain. They destroyed him. He's not what they remember from the comics, blah, blah, blah. I get those concerns, and I think those are legitimate concerns and legitimate gripes that you would have with the movie. But for me personally, and I'm not excusing Marvel for this, but we kind of know that Marvel doesn't really pay that much attention to their villains. They're kind of throwaway. And again, I get it. People like Taskmaster. He's really good in the comics. Guess what? He's still in the comics, so I think you're in good hands. But like I said, Marvel really doesn't put that much time into their villains other than their big baddie villains in Avenger films. And I think that's on purpose, because if you have all these little small villains that are pretty much forgettable and people always talk about saying that, man, I don't even remember the Marvel villain in that Marvel movie. Can you remember the villain's name in Thor: The Dark World? Just think about it for a minute. You can't. And like I said, I think that's on purpose, because we have all these really bad villains, and then we get up to Thanos and you're like, God damn, Thanos is probably the best Marvel villain ever. And that's because all the other villains are not memorable at all. But overall, guys, I thought that Black Widow was a really good movie. Was it a surprise? I don't think it was a surprise. I'm not one of these people who are like, the MCU is dead after Infinity War, it's over. Marvel usually hits it out of the park, and Black Widow is no different. Really enjoyed this movie. These are the kind of movies that I really like. These are the movies that I think I put on a high pedestal. If I can have fun sitting in a theater with a group of friends eating some popcorn and getting bloated, it's a good time. But guys, let me know what you think of Black Widow in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think it's the worst MCU film of all time, or do you think it's the best one? Also guys, don't forget to check out my Twitter so you can stay up to date with my channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out some of my other reviews. And remember guys, keep watching movies.